Geez, I feel like I forget how to podcast, so I hope I got everything going. We've got the camera going. We've got the recorder going. I'm going to try to put that slightly out of view. I don't know. Maybe it's still in your view. I've got my little makeshift table. I think we've got everything that we need to podcast right now, right? Camera, recorder. That's literally it, I guess. We've got lights on. Okay. Welcome back to Whiskey Noobs. A very, very long welcome back. Maybe not for you, because I recorded some stuff in advance, but very long for me because I have been moving over the course of the past couple months. If you're watching the video version, you probably can see that I'm not in the same room that I used to record this in. Hoping the audio is going to be good. It will most certainly improve over the next few weeks, but right now I'm in a little bit of an open room, so it might get just a hair echoey. I'm closing off some of this room and adding in audio insulation, things like that, that should improve the situation a little bit, but right now we're making do with what we've got. Got a little folding table, those sorts of things. Okay, let's cut to the chase here for those of you who are new here. My name is Chris, and this is the Whiskey Noobs podcast, and today we are talking about making the perfect whiskey selection, the perfect lineup of whiskeys to put on your shelf. What sorts of things should you consider? What process can you kind of step through in order to determine what you want to buy and be a little bit more targeted? My goal with this is, I think everybody who's newer to whiskey runs into this, where you kind of buy things without any kind of particular goal in mind, and then you end up like, I wish I hadn't bought that. Why did I even buy this? Why did I spend so much money on that? And if you don't have a plan, that happens very easily. So my thought is this will help establish a plan. And for those of you who have developed collections, maybe it's like, oh, you know what? I should think about a couple of these things before I move on. I'm still working to kind of implement some of this stuff, aside from all the bottles that I am sent, because that's a little different. I'm doing those for reviews, right? So the goal from this episode is mainly just going to be giving you guys some helpful tips to think about, and how much whiskey is too much whiskey, because I think there's an actual answer to that question. I don't think the answer is no such thing. I think there is. Like if you get too much whiskey, some of the bottles are going to start going bad. You're going to forget that some of them exist. Bad things can even happen. If you have so much whiskey that you're losing track of them, some of them maybe fall over, leak out of the cork, or they'll eat the cork up. All kinds of things. Like, there is such thing as too much whiskey. Maybe I just feel like that's fresh on my mind because I just moved, and that's a lot of whiskey to move. I was giving plenty of it away, but I digress. Before we get to that, we have to talk about the Patreon. This is going to be a little bit longer of a Patreon announcement because it's actually an announcement about the whole Whiskey Noobs as a whole, not just about the Patreon. So let's get to it. Oh, yeah, I have a reminder in my notes. It just threw me off to do this in such a way that it can be cut out easily, because maybe we'll get delayed and we'll have to cut this out. So the announcement, I've alluded to an announcement many times in many podcasts and on my email list, things like that. It's finally here. Okay, so the announcement is, I have officially, as of the airing of this, not as of the recording of this, put in my 2-week notice at my job, which means this is now going to be my full-time gig. Not necessarily just the podcast, but between the podcast, the Patreon, the Perfect Pairing Club that I do with Adam from Dreamer Cigars, and the solo blind that I do that you might know about on justneat.shop. Between those things and, of course, other odds and ends, I'm going to try to make this work for a limited period of time. We're going to see what happens, which means time is now ticking to see whether or not I can make this work. I have set aside a certain amount of time. I think I have to double check. It's going to be one of those things that's going to be kind of fluid as we go. As of right now, my plan is for like 4 months to just see what happens, okay? And see if things ramp up in the way that they kind of need to begin ramping up in order for this to be a permanent thing. So that's the goal. The goal would be to make this a permanent thing, but we'll see what happens, So this is a nerve-wracking thing. If I seem nervous, it's because I am. I haven't actually put in my 2-week notice yet, so just the thought of it is nerve-wracking to me. And even now, I'm like, I hope that actually happens. That's why I'm making this easy to cut out, because it might not. Things can go one way or the other. Right now, it seems like that's going to be the case. So I wanted to make that clear. Now let's talk about what's in it for you guys. So that's the Whiskey Noobs announcement. Actually, there's more Whiskey Noobs announcement, but what's in it for you guys? So the first and foremost thing is I'm still working on what it is that I want to add to the Patreon. But in general, you should be getting a lot more free content as well. I want to be posting Reels and YouTube Shorts and TikToks way more regularly. I want to be making those. I want to get really good at making those and making them informative and making them not just brain rot content. That's like my main goal, is to make it something where you go to my page not because I, give your brain dopamine, but because that you're going to find something useful, or that there's a video you're going to want to save because it's actually going to help you at the liquor store. Or maybe there's something I do like doing some skits and meaningful content. And then occasionally funny stuff, which gets a little bit closer to brain rot, but I really love humor and comedy. So on occasion, I'll probably do funny stuff as well. But I really want to try to make it a useful page. So I really want to master that. I want to master the lighting, the camera, the angles, those sorts of things, and make way better content. So hopefully you guys are going to start seeing that. That also means more free podcast content. So the goal, and once again, I'm recording this before all this happens, so these are all goals right now. The goal would be to make Whiskey Noobs a weekly podcast again. And so we'd have weekly podcasts. We'd have way more regular posting on the other social medias. Eventually, if things keep going my way, I would really like to get on YouTube and make long-form YouTube videos as well, in addition to the podcast, just long-form YouTube videos. Couldn't get that one out. Okay, so that's really what's in it for you guys from a free perspective, and from people who just like the Whiskey Noob stuff and just want to support me, and I'm totally okay with that. Liking the videos, sharing the videos, saving the videos, liking the podcast, commenting, all those things are immensely helpful, and they will never have been more important than they will be over the course of these next 4 months. So, and there might be a little bit delay as of the airing of this podcast, because this means that I've put in my notice, and I really want to I really like the people that I work with. I don't want to screw them over, so I might make it like a 1 month notice. I'm going to try to work that out to make it the least painful transition possible. So this might be delayed and then pick up in September from what I'm telling you right now. So if you're still posting twice a week, then that's probably why. Now, what's also in it for you from the Patreon perspective, because I'm still working on this, but I want to make the Patreon page awesome. I would love to make this a main income source. I think that would be phenomenal, and I want it to feel like you guys are getting an awesome deal, and then I'm getting the support that I need to literally keep my house. So that's really my goal with the Patreon moving forward. I don't have it all worked out yet. I've got lots of ideas that I'm working on, and feel free, especially if you're in the Discord or if you're currently on the Patreon and you want specific benefits, please let me know. If you say something on the Discord, please tag me, because I miss them if you don't. And if you say something on the Patreon page in the group chat there, or just DM me individually, I should see that. And let me know what sorts of things you want to see. But right away, I'm thinking at least a monthly podcast episode that only patrons get. I haven't figured out the structure for it yet. I want to do something kind of unique with it, I think, and make it something that's worth putting behind a paywall, and you feel like you're getting an awesome deal from it. The other thing that I want to add to the Patreon most likely is going to be either weekly or monthly vlogs. I don't know if weekly is going to make sense. It's going to depend on how quickly things are moving, but basically updates. Because you're the patrons and you are helping fund all of this, and I want you to know. It's kind of like when you give somebody a scholarship and then you meet up with them every semester. It's hey, here's where your money's going. Here's what I'm doing. Here is the improvements that I'm making, and what progress we're making towards actually being able to continue and sustain this as a full-time gig. So I want to do vlog updates like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Maybe just old school webcam style, talking to the camera for 5 or 10 minutes. And then I also want to ramp up barrel picks, which I think could be a lot of fun. And I know that's a benefit that a lot of patrons love on other people's Patreons as well. I know that's a big benefit for a lot of people. So I want to do more barrel picks. I want to involve patrons in more barrel picks. And then I even might put together a tier that'll be a higher end tier where you are guaranteed one of the barrel picks. I think that would be a lot of fun as well. This all depends on trajectories. Like I said, it's just going to depend on if I see things going the way that I think that's going to be helpful, that's going to be good. I'm working on more benefits than that, but that's where we're at right now. So once again, feel free to give me some feedback. I'm sure as I'm editing this, I'm super nervous right now. I might cut it out, make it a little bit less rambly, something like that. And of course, if things go south over the course of between now and airing this podcast, I might just cut this all out entirely. But yeah, that's that. So this isn't 100% certain for me right now, but if you're hearing this, it's 100% certain because I've already put my notice in. So I want to make very clear, joining the Patreon page will be more important right now for the next 4 months than ever. If you've ever wanted the opportunity for a creator that you like, hopefully me, to make this a full-time gig and you've wanted to be a part of that, this is you will be directly a part of that. The success or failure of the Patreon will be a direct indicator of whether or not I'm able to do this full time. Of course, I have other income streams like I mentioned, but the Patreon page is really the thing that I'm counting on to continue to ramp up, which feels weird. Sometimes it feels kind of icky, but it also feels kind of hopeful. So it's like icky because it's like I'm kind of asking for money, but it's also hopeful because it's like people care about me enough to help fund this and make this a thing, which I'm going to get emotional if I keep talking about it. But right now, it's the most important time if you would consider going and checking out the Patreon page. It's linked down in the show notes. It's linked in my bio on everything, I think. Please just consider looking into that because it right now would make the biggest difference. And if you choose to support me, if that's something that you're into and you want to see me succeed, genuinely, I cannot thank you enough. Like, this is me taking a leap of faith to try to pursue my dreams, and I cannot thank you guys enough. So that's enough of the sappiness. Now let's talk about the perfect whiskey selection, because I want to give guidelines, but also this is something that just varies person to person. So my idea is I want to be able to help you get a structure to be more decisive in the bottles that you're buying, establish a tempo, establish a plan, and hopefully not waste money. And this varies a lot because not only is everybody going to have a different goal for the number of bottles that they want, they're going to have different priorities. They might prefer a certain type of whiskey. Maybe you're like all bourbon, and so everything you buy is going to be bourbon. Maybe you're all Scotch, so it's going to be all Scotch. Everybody has a different preference. But I think these guidelines will apply to everybody, including people who already have selections, to help make it more clear and help avoid buying things that you later regret buying. So first I want to say, why did I call it a selection? I said if you want to put together a whiskey selection. I hope I said whiskey and not bourbon. I think I did. If you want to put together a whiskey selection and not collection. This is a very small semantic thing, but I think it's important. So one of the things, and I'm pretty sure this originated from that one dude, Ryan. Check him out on TikTok and on Instagram, who now works for Penelope. Awesome creator, and I think this originates from him. He calls it a whiskey selection and not a collection. And that is because, and this is something that myself and many other creators have talked about, you don't really want to collect whiskey. A lot of times you don't want bottles to just gather dust. Like most people who are into gathering whiskey and getting lots of different bottles, the idea is to be able to drink different ones, try them side by side, try them with friends, and open those bottles and try them. And if you're opening them and trying them, then it's not really a collection. And so if you're trying multiple different bottles and you're offering them for people to try, that's more of a selection. It's kind of like a bar has a selection. So it's a very small semantic thing, but I heard Ryan explain a selection versus collection. I thought that's a great way to put that. So I really like it. And that's why I say selection. And I just wanted to point that out because I said whiskey selection. People might be like, I wonder why I keep saying that specifically. Now, if you want to put together the perfect whiskey selection, so the first thing I would say is pick a number. Pick a number of bottles that is your goal. If you have a huge selection already, pick a number of bottles to try to whittle down to make it an effective selection. If you don't have any right now, or you've got a couple and you're into whiskey and you're learning about it, pick a number that's your goal that you want to get to. And you want to consider a lot of things. Obviously, financial feasibility is a very important one. And maybe that's, maybe you know your goal is not feasible right now, but you set a pace, which we're going to talk about later, that gets you there over the course of years. That's totally fine. But pick a number. And so I would start with a number that you think is going to be effective to serve your purposes, and then worry about the financials, not in terms of how many bottles can I afford, but more in terms of, okay, I want this number, how long will it take me to get there? So that's the first thing. The second thing to consider is, okay, how often do you drink? How often do you have friends over who drink with you? That's also going to affect the tempo, but it's also going to affect the number of bottles that you want to have, right? Because if you are drinking 1 glass per week, then you don't need very many bottles. You could even just kind of go through 1 bottle and maybe have a selection of like 5, but you don't drink often enough, so you can just alternate them out as you go. Maybe you have company over a lot and you like offering people drinks, or you like doing bottle shares where they bring over some of their favorite bottles and you have some of your favorite bottles. And so you're draining those bottles a lot. Well, then maybe you want to have more, or you want to have a bigger selection, or you want to have enough different things that different people can try them. If they don't like bourbon, they can try scotch. If they don't like scotch, they can try rye. Maybe that's a priority in your bottle selection. So think about those things and then think about what number you would want. And that's the best advice I can give. I know it's a little bit vague, but what I did, because later I'm going to walk through what I think will be my perfect selection. What I did was I threw out a number and I thought, would I have enough of that or that or that? Okay, probably not. Okay, let me try this number. I think maybe I could make that work in my head. Let me try this one. No, that's definitely too many. And I just kind of worked around it in my head like that. So do that. Walk through it like that and think to yourself, would this number be enough? Then, when you've got a number in your head, you got to decide on priorities. And this is the easiest to mess up, and it's the easiest thing to cost you money when you mess it up. The idea is, what are you going to prioritize with your selection? So I think for me, it is being able to try different things side by side, and guests being able to try different things and decide what they like. Those are kind of my priorities, which puts me in the camp of like, I really want variety. But is your priority that you want the highest quality? Do you want just to have like you it doesn't matter if it takes you years to get a selection of 10 bottles. You want those 10 bottles to be astounding. You're only going to open them at like Christmas or something. And the rest of the days you'll either drink beer or drink, your usual daily sipper, and that'll be the only other bottle that you buy. What is your priority going to be? Are you going to prioritize a certain category, kind of like I alluded to? Are you like, I only want bourbon because bourbon is, America's native spirit? Or are you like, I only want scotch because scotch is that pop culture icon of a whiskey that everybody talks about, or used to talk about at least? What are you going to prioritize? Or you only like one type of thing, so obviously then you only prioritize that thing. Or do you want to be able to make cocktails or mix in other spirits in your cocktails or try other spirits? Maybe this ventures outside of whiskey for you and you want to try some whiskeys and some tequilas and some mezcals, and you gotta, especially if you're doing this like budget style, you gotta allocate for that in your budget. So what sort of a thing are you planning to prioritize? That's an important thing to keep in mind. And that, I think, is the most important thing to help you save money, because if you don't have your priorities in mind, you will make purchases that you regret. So me personally, I want variety. I want to be able to try a bunch of different things. I've made the mistake 100 times where I'm like, well, I know I've got 10 bourbons at home, but I really wanted to try this one that somebody else was talking about. And then I buy it and I try it and I'm like, yeah, that's great. But now I have 11 bourbons and I still don't have any scotches. So your priorities will really drive what you should be buying in order to just feel like you're getting the most out of the money that you're spending on your whiskey selection. So I don't want to overstate that too much, but I also don't want to understate it. It's very important, and it's going to help you stay guided in your mission. And that is something, the priority thing is something that even if you have a well-established whiskey selection, the priorities can really help you moving forward. Like, make sure you're buying the things that you want to add to your collection. Make sure I said collection. I don't know if you caught that. I said it. The things you want to add to your selection, make sure you have that in mind, right? And also, by the way, I still call it a collection sometimes. I don't want to sound like snooty when I say that, but I do think selection is like a better term, so I try to use it, That's what I don't actually like. I'm not offended if you call my stuff my collection. To some extent, I collect bottles. To the other extent, I use them, so it's a selection. Anyhow, I digressed. I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole, but the next thing is, decide on a budget flow. So this can be done as with your heart or with your brain as you want it to be. It can be with your heart where it's just like, this is where I'm headed. Let's set a budget that I can afford and we're going to go there. It can be with your brain where it's like, I want, if you want those high-end bottles, here's how often I can afford to buy a high-end bottle. And this is how often I'm going to do it then. It can be with your brain in that you're like, I want to get this many different bottles and I want to be there in this many years. Let's calculate and see if I can afford to do it that way. And if so, I'll buy it with, at this certain pace. The number one thing I would say is, especially if you're following your heart, which is what I did, I just kind of said, yeah, I think I'm going to do this, but make sure it's something you can afford. Make sure it's not something like, I'm following my heart. I bought 17 bottles today while I was at the store. Not necessarily that way. I'm not encouraging any financial irresponsibility, and this is not a financial podcast. So just keep that in mind as well. But truly, like, just because in my experience as well, it's easy to get carried away. So I just don't want people to think I'm encouraging, like, going willy-nilly. Don't show your spouse this podcast and be like, see, Chris from Whiskey Noobs said, just follow my heart. Don't do that, okay? That's not what I'm trying to get at. But when I say follow your heart, I mainly mean, like, when I started my whiskey selection, based on the amount of money that I had at the time and the money that I was making, I was like, I'm not going to like calculate out how long it's going to take me to amass a selection, but I'm going to buy one bottle per paycheck, and that's just what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make sure I'm drinking it slowly enough that I amass a selection and that I'm not just smoking through bottles and not actually gaining any. And then that's the other dial you can tune, right? So if you've got a certain goal in mind to get this many bottles by this date, and you know that you can, or maybe not this date, but you want to get this many bottles in this many years, and you know that you can afford to buy this many bottles per year, and you can get there, but it depends on how quickly you're drinking it. Then that's the knob that you can turn, is I'm going to drink a little bit less to make sure that I get there. So that's another thing that you can keep in mind. Like, this is all kind of fluid, but if you want to take it down to bare bones, literally what I did was I was just like, I'm going to buy one bottle per paycheck because I know that I can afford that right now, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to drink it slowly enough that I make sure I amass enough bottles so that I can do side-by-side tastings and so that I can offer things to my guests. And that's literally what I did. So decide on your budget flow. And then the last thing that I have here is evaluate. Okay, so are any of your whiskeys getting worse? Are some of them getting down to about the halfway point, and then that you're leaving them for so long that they're starting to taste bad? Then maybe you have too many bottles. Are you burning through bottles way too fast? Maybe you're drinking it too fast. Evaluate as you go. Don't forget to come up for air and be like, am I on the right path? Do I have, if you're looking for variety, do I have a variety for my guests to try? Or do I just have like 20 different bourbons and I haven't bought any scotches, and my goal was to buy scotch? Or was my goal for variety, but so far I've got 10 bottles and I only drink the bourbons, so I should probably buy more bourbons? Evaluate those sorts of things as you go, because it's a fluid thing. You're going to learn as you go. That's just the way that it works. So that is a very important step to keep in mind, not just right now as you're listening to the podcast and you're making this plan, but moving forward, like in the future. Maybe throw a reminder in your phone for every 2 months. Hey, come up for air. What am I drinking? Am I drinking it fast enough? Am I drinking it too fast? Do I have too many bottles? Those sorts of things. And then I guess the last little tip that I'm going to mention is also just please don't use your selection as an excuse to drink a ton. That's a really easy thing to do, to be like, every Friday night I'm going to try 5-6 different bottles all at once, and then maybe on Wednesdays I will too. You don't want to do that either. So be aware of your of the temptation that it could be, and whether or not you think you can manage that. Because if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that I heavily encourage limiting your drinking. I pretty much don't drink. Well, in the summertime, I drink a little bit more. I don't want to make it seem like I'm this saint, right? I do drink sometimes. And for a while there, it was 1 drink per week was my limit. Now I'm like, if I want to drink, I'm going to have a drink. You only live once. But I really, really do not drink as much as people think I do. I definitely don't binge drink as much as people think I do, or drink anything beyond my limit. Of course, every once in a while I go a little overboard. But if you were looking at me and you're saying he's got so many bottles of whiskey, he's drinking some absurd amount, so clearly I can too. Don't get that impression in your head. I don't drink very much at all, and I do lots of reviews where I spit out the whiskeys, things like that. I rarely. I don't want to say rarely, but I pretty rarely drink my whiskey selection for pleasure. Usually, if I am drinking for pleasure, it's like a social drink out with friends or something like that. So, like, it's pretty rare that I'm like a Friday night and I want to go grab this bottle and have a few glasses of it. I do love doing that. That's what got me into the hobby, but I don't drink very much. So, I'm not trying to be on my soapbox here. I just want to make that very clear because I feel like I am responsible for the image I give off. And if that image is heavily drinking, I feel responsible for that image. So that's why I'm kind of on my soapbox there. I don't want to give off that impression. So want to make that clear. Now let's talk about what I would do, because I know a lot of people are probably wondering, like, okay, well, this is your advice, but what would you actually do? So I want to make clear, first of all, well, what would you actually do? You actually own like 250 bottles of whiskey or something like that, Chris. I actually have no idea the number, to be clear. But I know at one point it was like 200, and that was a little while ago. So if you're thinking that, the truth of the matter is I would not have this many bottles of whiskey. If I was just a hobbyist, I would not have this many bottles of whiskey at all. I only have this many because I have them sent to me for reviews. And if you think that's a load, that's a crock, you're full of it, you're probably still buying multiple bottles per week. I very rarely buy whiskey for just me. Sometimes I'll put it on, I put it often on like my birthday list or my Christmas list or gift lists for friends. But I don't often buy myself a specific whiskey. There are a few bottles that I've been wanting for a while that I just haven't bought myself. A lot of the bottles come to me from reviews. That is not a brag. That is me trying to make it clear what I'm talking about. So if it's Chris's perfect world and he has his perfect whiskey selection and he doesn't have all these whiskeys being sent to him for reviews, my apologies. My shoulder just got tight if you're watching the video version. What would I do? So the number I would pick, first of all, would be 20. I landed on this number doing that method I mentioned earlier. Okay, what could I do with 10 bottles? Okay, what would I do with 25 bottles? That's too many. What would I do with 15? I don't know if that's quite enough. Let's do 20. So I think 20 is like the perfect amount of bottles. And this is keeping in mind that you're going to finish a bottle and then buy another one. So like this isn't like you're only ever going to drink these 20 bottles for the rest of your life. This is just like, what would you do? What would your selection look like? My priority, I remember, most important thing, pick a priority. My priority would be variety. And I mentioned that, I alluded to it earlier. I'm big on being able to do tastings of different things side by side. I'm big on my guests being able to do different tastings. I love, like, one of my favorite nights is to just have people over and they get to try 2 or 3 different things. I love doing that. So that would probably be my priority. And given that, what you're about to see, what I'm about to explain to you, my bottle breakdown is kind of alluding to that priority. So, or I should say it is a result of that priority. So the category I'm going to have the most of by far is going to be bourbon. And that is because, first of all, it's highly accessible here in the United States. Second of all, I love bourbon. I tend to lean towards it, even though I don't think I objectively like the flavor the most, but I think I'm very enamored with the culture of bourbon and the Kentucky culture and the culture that has spread now to all kinds of states, including my own. And I love going to distilleries and things like that. So I really like bourbon, and that might slowly get crept up upon by American single malts, but for right now, I'm thinking bourbon. I also want to mention, all of this kind of came off the cuff. I was going to sit down and really think deeply about it, but then I thought, you know what? No, I think what comes to mind first is probably my brain saying, hey, this is what you drink the most of. And what comes to mind second is like, hey, this is what you drink the second most of. So I actually went a little bit more off the cuff with this. So I'm thinking 5 straight bourbons, which is like bourbon. I threw in the word straight. Straight actually means it's aged at least 2 years. But what I mean by it is bourbons that are not finished in anything. And then 3 finished bourbons. And what I mean by a finished bourbon is you take a bourbon, you finish it in a used barrel, something that had something else in it or does not satisfy the criteria to be a bourbon, which would be a new charred oak barrel. That is what satisfies the bourbon criteria. You take a barrel other than that, you finish the bourbon in it, think to yourself a port wine barrel, a cognac barrel, PX sherry casks. There's all kinds out there now. You finish it in one of those barrels, and then it gives it a little bit more of a flavor, a little bit of a different flavor, I should say. I'm thinking I would do 5 normal bourbons, 3 finished bourbons. So you can see we're almost halfway there and we're all on bourbon, which it's not lost on me, but I do think I lean the most towards bourbon and finished bourbons. So, first 8 bottles will be a mix of normal bourbon and finished bourbon, and then I'm going to go with 3 American single malts. Now, I mentioned this might creep up on the bourbon over time, but right now I'm thinking 3 American single malts because I'm thinking that's going to be a variety where American single malt has a huge flavor spectrum, and I want to get a little bit of all of it. And there's also lots of different finishes you can do with American single malts, so I feel like 3 gives me enough variety without going too overboard. Then, if you're wondering specific brands, we're going to get to that, there's a funny reason I'm not talking about specific brands yet. Then we're going to go with 3 Scotch whiskeys for the same reason as American single malt, where I think I got to get more variety from Scotch. There's such a huge flavor spectrum, and I enjoy different Scotches so much. Like, for sure, you got to have something peated, and maybe even 2 things that are peated, which only leaves you 1 unpeated Scotch that you got to pick. And my alarm is currently going off because I usually pray at this time. I'm running a little bit late on this podcast, but that's okay. We're having fun here. I actually really enjoy this topic. When I came up with it, I was like, this is going to be a blast. So we're at 5 straight bourbon whiskeys, 3 finished bourbons, 3 American single malts, and 3 Scotch whiskeys. Then I'm going to go with 2 Irish whiskeys because there is some variety there, and I actually love Irish whiskey. I really think that there's a lot of potential to be had in the Irish whiskey category. And if I were to try more, I would develop even more of an affinity for it. But right now, I think 2 Irish whiskeys gets the job done for me, where I could find 2 different ones, maybe like a Redbreast 12-year cask strength, although that might get filed under special occasion bottle, to be honest. Maybe just Redbreast 12-year. And then something a little bit less expensive, like a Bushmills Black Bush. I said I wasn't going to mention specific brands, but here we are. Okay. I think I can get it done with a couple of different bottles, but that's all subject to change as I would try more, you know. Then I'm thinking 2 rye whiskeys because rye whiskey is a super versatile grain. So I could have 10 rye whiskeys and not cover all the flavor spectrum that rye covers. But I find myself only going for rye on like a special occasion. So I don't think it needs to be a huge amount of my whiskey selection. Granted, I love ryes, but I just don't find myself reaching for them as much. I went through this little period where I did, and now it's kind of fading out a little bit more. So right now I'm at 2 rye whiskeys. And then I saved 2 spots for special occasion bottles. And I realized right now, as I'm saying this, I didn't save any spots for like wild card bottles, which would be like there's Australian single malt, there's Japanese whiskey, there's Indian whiskey, there's Canadian whiskey. I didn't save any spot for any wild cards, but I think those would just kind of cycle in as we go. You know what I mean? It would be like every once in a while, let's just pick up a wild card because personally I don't find myself grabbing wild cards very often. So then 2 special occasion bottles, and I'm thinking that's because on any given special occasion, I might not be in the mood for bourbon, and I might not be in the mood for Scotch. So I got to have like 2, so that way I can pick the one that I'm more in the mood for. That's really the only thought behind that. Originally I had 3, and then I was like, that's too many special occasion bottles. You're not running into that many special occasions, right? So that's what I would do. That being said, I think I would most likely gather special occasion bottles as time went on. So I'd probably, 20 bottles would be my core collection and selection, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then as time goes on, I would slowly be like, for this special occasion, for my child being born, let's say, I'm going to buy this bottle. And then I'm probably going to drink 3 glasses of it, and then I'm going to save it for a while. Or maybe I would buy a specific special occasion bottle and it would all be drank at that special occasion. Don't worry, not by me. But like if there's a huge group of people, if it's my best friend's wedding, I might buy a real nice bottle and I'm like, we're all splitting this. I know some of you don't even appreciate whiskey as much as us, but I want everybody to enjoy this and share in that. Those sorts of things would come along, but the 20 would be like my core selection that I'd have at home for when friends come over and people want to try stuff, right? So that's just an overview of what I think I would do, and I think that gives you a lean collection where you don't have bottles going bad, but you don't have a lack of bottles where when people come over and they're like, I don't really like this, can I try something like that? You'd be like, I don't have it, and that's just my personal goal. That's just me. You know, if your goal, and I totally think it's fair to start with a goal of like 5, because you might buy those 5 and say, oh, I like this the most. Let me kind of go that way. But this is me having had a selection for a few years, what I would specifically do. And I think for those who do have big selections at home, that's a good exercise to do, man, to walk through it and be like, what do I think I want? You know, that way you make sure you're buying the things that you specifically want. Now, I didn't mention any specific brands except for those couple, because ironically enough, we got to get to our Patreon questions. And these come to us from the patrons. They're allowed to ask questions that I will answer on the podcast. And one of them, I kid you not, I didn't even mention that this is what the episode is going to be about, was if you could build your ultimate 6-bottle bar with the following requirements, what would you pick? And the requirement is 1 bourbon, 1 rye, 1 American single malt, 1 scotch, 1 Irish, 1 wild card. So I thought that was hilarious. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that somebody actually asked this without me ever indicating that's what this episode was about. I didn't pick specific bottles to walk through this, but I'm going to kind of talk through it. So if I had to pick 1 bourbon, it would definitely... Oh, my alarm is going off again. Let me hit dismiss on that. Should have done that the first time. If I had to pick 1 bourbon, it would definitely be like a middle-of-the-road bourbon. It's not going to be a super spicy, punchy bourbon, and it's also not going to be a super mellow, approachable bourbon. I'm going to try to stay in the middle. That way most of my guests like it and can try it. So I'm thinking along the lines of on the milder side of the middle would be Redwood Empire Pipe Dream. If you've been around, you know that I absolutely love that bottle. And then on the spicier side of the mild would be like a Noah's Mill. So maybe something in between those two, or maybe one of those two. If I'm gonna just make myself lock stuff in right now. So if it's a 6-bottle bar, I'm gonna go with the slightly higher end stuff. I'm gonna go with, as I was about to say Noah's Mill, I realized Woodford Double Oaked. No, I'm gonna go with Noah's Mill. I'm going with Noah's Mill. Final answer. If I had to pick 1 rye, I think I gotta go classic rye flavors. I think I gotta go like spicy bakery spice sort of thing. But I like things to have a little bit of a twist. So I'm gonna go with a rye that has baking spice. It really does. But it also has like bourbony notes. It's got oakiness. It's got fruitiness. And I'm super duper biased because this was my second barrel pick I ever did. I'm going to go with Hard Truth's Sweet Mash Rye. I think that one is just one that it would scratch the rye itch for me, but also be different enough that I would drink it relatively often. 1 American single malt is going to be tough because right now I'm going through a phase of exploring and enjoying American single malts. If I had to pick one, I think it would serve as a special occasion bottle. It would be Westward Whiskey's Milestone, and I think it was the release number 2. I think it was Milestone number 2, and that bottle was oh no, I've miscalculated. Because I also love Jack Daniel's American Single Malt. It's their Traveler Special. Oh boy. I actually think I might have to change my answer to the Jack Daniel's one. I've been enjoying it that much lately. So Jack Daniel's American Single Malt, it's their Traveler Special. Man, I mean, when I tell you it's close, if you ask me again tomorrow, I might change my mind between those two. I'm going to lock in Jack Daniel's for right now. Also, it's kind of funny to have an American Single Malt with the Jack Daniel's name on it. If I had to pick one Scotch, since I have the American Single Malt, for Scotch, we're definitely going peated. And since I don't have a huge experience with Scotch, I'm going to go with the first one that comes to mind, which is, oh my goodness. Not Bunnahabhain. What's Lagavulin? There we go. Jeez. Lagavulin, 16-year. 16 year or 17 year, I think it's 16 year, about $100 bottle. That would be another special occasion one for sure. One Irish whiskey is definitely going to be either Redbreast 12 year, or if I can afford it after buying all these other ones, Redbreast 12 year cask strength. Huge love for that bottle, for Redbreast 12 year and for the cask strength. If I could afford it, I'd go with the cask strength. One wild card. I didn't really think about a wild card, but now I am. My wild card, My wild card would be a Christmas whiskey. And I think it would be Jameson Black Barrel. Or it would be Watershed's Nocino finished bourbon. I drink both of those at Christmas heavily. I'm so sorry. There's something going in my eye if you're watching the video version. I drink both of those a lot around the holidays, so they have like a special holiday meaning for me. But I think I'd have to go with Jameson Black Barrel just because I think the only reason it wins is because it goes a little further back. I discovered Jameson Black Barrel before I discovered Watershed's Nocino finish, so I feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy about it. And maybe it's also because I'm planning a trip to Ireland. Maybe that's in my head. I don't know. Yeah, I think I got to go with Jameson Black Barrel as my wild card. And so, yeah, that's the selection. I don't even remember what I said, so let's try it. Noah's Mill, I think. Yeah. Hard Truth Sweet Mash Rye. Jack Daniel's American Single Malt, the Traveler Special. Lagavulin 16-year. Redbreast 12-year. I'm going to say cask strength. And then Jameson Black Barrel. Weird that in my initial one, I only picked 2 Irish whiskeys. And then down here, I picked 2 Irish whiskeys. Maybe I need to rethink that a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, that's my gut reaction to that. The other question I forgot to look up, so I'm going to look it up real quick and then I'm going to answer it. Okay, I did way more research than I thought I was going to. So the question is, would you ever compete in Matt Madness? And my assumption was this is something that a whiskey influencer does. It is correct. So Matt Madness is some kind of a competition. It's like March Madness, kind of, that is put on by ADHD Whiskey. And my understanding is he has different whiskey influencers or content creators on to do different contests, like tasting whiskeys. And that's the most that I understand about it. I found that from a Reddit thread. I looked through a couple of the videos, and so I think hold on one second. I thought maybe I found something new. No. Yeah, that's the most that I know about it. So would I ever participate? Absolutely. I'm big into doing collaborations and things. I don't know exactly what it entails, so maybe I'll bite my tongue later on. But yeah, I think that'd be really cool. I wish I knew more about it. I know that ADHD Whiskey channel, I think it's Matt Porter if I'm not mistaken. I know that that's super duper popular. I don't know as much about the YouTubers, the whiskey YouTubers, which I need to know more about if I'm going to get into YouTube videos. I really got to figure that out. But yeah, no, I mean, I would absolutely do that. If it's just like a popularity contest, maybe not. Maybe that would make me change my mind. But if this is like some kind of like a fun, like skills-based or just kind of all-in-good fun type contest, maybe I'd do something like that. I don't think I know enough about it. Hopefully that answers your question. I might have to do more research on what exactly it is. But those are all the questions that we've got for this podcast. And as you've heard, my alarm keeps going off. So I am going to wrap things up. Once again, just thank you guys all so much for your support, especially if I kept that beginning announcement in this episode more than any other. Thank you for your support. Please consider going and checking out that Patreon page. And I will leave you guys with learn to drink, drink to learn. Hi there. If you're still listening to this, then I'm going to assume that you enjoyed the show. So please consider taking a moment to leave a 5-star rating or review and subscribe on whatever platform it is that you're watching/listening to this on. And as always, please, please, please drink responsibly. Cheers.